All right, we are live here on the Playbook Against the Spread podcast. Marc Lawrence will kick things off for us as we talk some NFL, Mark, the NFC this week.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Greg. NFC this week, a little bit of college football, the opening week 0, I guess, if you will, for the games this weekend. And then we'll really get into it starting next week with some predictions. And looking forward to tearing the card apart here with our good friends, our experts, our panel of experts, Greg DePalma, who just introduced himself to the show, our producer extraordinaire, and also Andy Iskoe, my good friend from Las Vegas, who I had the pleasure of spending the week with out in Las Vegas last week. I will say this, that we did enter a few contests, and we also had quite a bit of good food in Las Vegas. Andy, welcome to the show.
Quite a bit of good food. And by the way, despite being a Las Vegas native, it was you, Mark, who gave a great recommendation for a breakfast place out here in Henderson. And it's going to be on my regular routine for, we sort of caught him on a very busy day, but the food was absolutely outstanding. And I thank you for that recommendation. And I'm now going to be a regular over there.
I appreciate that. I'm not that was anything, but I thought it was excellent as well. You know, albeit the lousy service, but it is what it was. It was Saturday night Christmas.
I didn't want to say lousy service, which is why I said it was a very busy morning.
Okay, well, that's a good way of putting it. I'll just
code word for it was slow.
It was slow, but we still ended up tipping him just as we normally would.
Yeah.
But really, I kind of felt it wasn't his fault. It was the kitchen. But nonetheless, we had a good time in Las Vegas, and I want to welcome our listeners out there to the podcast here this particular week. As I said, we're going to be tearing apart the NFC, to our NFC preview this week with both Andy Iskoe and Greg DePalma. And I also want to let our listeners know that this will be football interview extravaganza continues here in the Pro Line Network. And for more NFC preview talk, be sure to check out Greg's live interview tonight with Greg Risden, the managing editor at LionsWire.com, and find out how many wins Jeff will predict for the Lions in 2025. I'll be curious to see that because I have a pretty firm stance or opinion on that. Their current win total now stands at 10.5 plus 110. For more NFL interviews and videos from the past weeks, including this week's Dolphins, Eagles, Steelers, 49ers, just check out the NFL section on our homepage for details. That's the same page for your college football fans out there as well. You can check out the college football section for plenty of interviews coming up this week with the Clemson Tigers, the Oklahoma Sooners. Greg's just working overtime doing all these interviews, and you're going to pick up a lot of really great information. Tomorrow, another live college football preview at 4 p.m. Eastern. So be sure to tune it down here on ProLine TV, where ProLine TV will also be debuting. I keep saying it each week, but we're going to be debuting it soon before the NFL season starts. Our Beat the Pros contest. You can go head-to-head with Andy Iskoe, Jim Feist, myself, Greg DePalma, and beat the pros. And if you do, there'll be a little bit of reward involved for you. So you can go head-to-head with us with our NFL football picks each week. You can do that on this right now, becoming a member on our premier Patreon page for just $5 a month. Besides having the option of joining our contest, which will get you that bonus, you'll also receive videos several days early before we post them on our free channel here. So it's a lot of perks, a lot of privileges by joining our premier Patreon page for just $5 a month. Be sure to do that. And remember, you can also cancel anytime if you don't like what it is you're seeing, but I'm pretty sure there'll be no thoughts of canceling on your part. And don't forget, guys, here, I mentioned here the Beat the Pros contest here. We're going to also be sharing all that information with you. It's going to model a lot of the Wise Guys contest in the Playbook Football newsletter. If you're familiar with that, we'll be offering up picks, double plays, single plays. So also stay tuned and get yourself ready to do just that. Do me a big favor, if you will. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notification down below, the like button as well. And while you're there, ring the bell. We'll be able to notify you when our next podcasts are being aired here on the ProLine Network. With that, guys, let's start first with our Week 0 college football card, because we're going to get into an in-depth card with the NFL or NFC preview here. So we've got officially the college football debuting this week on Saturday, this weekend, with a handful of games here. And let's take a little spin past each of these here. We're not going to get too deep into these football games, but Andy, I'm going to throw the first one at you. Kansas State, Iowa State, but they're kicking off in Dublin, Iowa, or Dublin, Ireland, I should say here. A little bit of double revenge here for Kansas State. What's your initial thought on this matchup?
Well, both of these coaches have been with their respective programs for a significant amount of time, and Iowa State's had the upper hand. I think they've won 4 of the last 5. So I'm sort of surprised that Kansas State is a 3 to even a 3.5 point favorite in this game. Campbell's done a great job with Iowa State. They're coming off, I think, a record-setting season last year. I think it was like 10-3. Kansas State, for the last several years under Kleiman, has been a pretty much a perennial Big 12 title contender. And of course, it was a little bit more difficult when Oklahoma and Texas were still in the conference. So these two teams figure to be contenders again this year. I think probably the other team that everybody is talking about, and with good reason, despite the fact that they lost their great running back to the Giants in the NFL Scatterboo, is Arizona State. Not sure if I'm going to play the game. I probably will have something on it, but it'll be Iowa State, and it probably will be a combination of taking the 3 or 3.5 if you can find it, and also money line on that. I like this Iowa State team. Historically, they've been overlooked. I mean, when you play in a very rural area such as Iowa State does, you don't get a lot of media attention, you don't get a lot of national attention, but all they seem to do is have a solid program year after year.
That they sure do. Greg DePalma, your take here. This is one of these rare conference season opening games. You don't get too many of them each football season.
By the way, I think we had that last year with Florida State and Georgia Tech. And it was Florida State was coming off that very disappointing letdown of that great season they had, and they didn't get invited. And the record showed it's 2-10, and Georgia Tech pulled the upset. We don't have that this year. Both of these programs, the Wildcats and the Cyclones, coming off.
Well, the one thing we do have in this game, though, guys, is a little bit of a revenge angle in this contest here. Kansas State's been taken out twice in a row by Iowa State, despite the fact they out-yarded the Cyclones in both of those football games. And the reason I'm mentioning that, Greg, is that teams seeking revenge in season opening games in Dublin, Ireland, it's happened 2 times, but they've won and covered both football games. How do you see this game shaking out, Greg?
Have the lines been this small? Because this is what? Is this the third one in Ireland now? Is this the third kickoff event?
I believe it is number 3. I believe it is.
I don't remember which one is the first one. Did the first one, was that Notre Dame Navy? Is that like a?
I think it might have been several years ago. I don't know that this is the third consecutive year of the Dublin game.
Okay.
But I seem to remember it was Notre Dame and Navy. I'll see if I can find it. And last year, to answer your question, Florida State was a 10.5 point favorite to Georgia Tech.
Yeah, little did we know who the better team was when the season was over, or by mid-season. Actually, by like the first month, we knew who the better team was. And that's the thing about these early contests.
By the way, excuse me, the Notre Dame game was Ireland was 2023. Notre Dame beat Navy 43-2 as a 21 point favorite.
There you go.
Okay. And I wonder if that was the first one, because you said there's been 2 in Ireland.
No, I think this is the third, and I wasn't sure if they were consecutive, but they have been 23, 24, and now 25.
Okay. And so are you saying that the Dogs have basically been the last?
No, the first one, Notre Dame covered that big number.
Yeah, they were 21. A big favorite.
And then last year it was the Georgia Tech winning outright.
What was that trend that you said, Mark?
Well, what I said here is that if a team goes into Ireland seeking revenge,
okay,
they were 2-0 straight up and against the spread. I'm going to have to look deeper because Navy was destroyed by Notre Dame, and I don't know if that was maybe even after Navy pulled that rare upset against the Irish back in the days when the Navy was pretty good. But
could have been.
Yeah.
Let me check that out. I don't know if you've got that.
Was that a season opener?
I'll do that right now.
Was it a season opener, Andy? Was it game 1, or did they play
in 20? It was game 1. It says neutral site. I believe that was Ireland because I do remember them doing that. As far as they lost by 3 the year before to Notre Dame, and they lost by 28 the year before. So that upset was quite a number of years ago.
It was a 3-point game the year before. Navy did cover, so I'm not sure if that had anything to do with it. But anyway, As far as this one, again, I know there's a game we're going to talk about that I've already seen on the board that you like, and that's kind of the one I like as well. And the reason I'm going to get with that one with you too is because I think the best way to look at early season matchups are upsets, because there's so much unpredictability. And in a 3-point matchup like this with two teams that are so evenly matched with each other over the last, and I get it, Iowa State, like beat them the last couple of times. I think they beat them 5 out of 7. And I think they've even covered a good number of those. But yeah, this one's one of those games. I'm just going to sit back. I'm going to enjoy. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to find out, because this is going to be a good idea to find out if one of these teams can win the conference based on good quarterback play. They've got two of the better quarterbacks in the conference in Becht and Johnson. And that's what I'm going to be zeroing in on.
Well, what we've got also here is two of the better coaches in the conference.
Yep.
Big Chris Kleiman fans. I know Greg and I are, probably Andy as well.
Yep.
And you can't discount what Iowa State has done. My goodness, under Matt Campbell, he's been terrific as an underdog in his career. How about 47-22 to the spread, taking points in his career? That's pretty tough to pass on.
Do you have the straight up record, by the way? Because I think that's also pretty good.
I think it's pretty good too, Andy. I think it's better than 50%, but I don't think it reaches the 67% level.
Yeah.
You've also got here, working in this contest here for Kansas State, they're ranked number 14 overall nationally in returning overall production coming into this football contest, but they're also stacked with, remember what we used to call super seniors back when COVID started, and they started granting an extra year of eligibility to players, and they were allowed a 5th year of eligibility. And some of them
that's almost over.
Well, it's over.
Is that over?
Well, really, in essence, there's still a trickle down factor because some teams did not. Some players did not choose to do that. And so they were, in essence, there like 6 and 7 years and still playing much.
I think that's the amazing thing that we're still talking about, that there are still some players taking advantage of something that was 5 years ago.
Exactly right. That's what they're doing here. And Kansas State, like I said, they got a ton of returning lettermen here. They got 45 lettermens back. That's 6 straight years in a row with 45 or more lettermen for them. And I mentioned here the super seniors on this squad here. I'm going to look for Kansas State in this football game and back Chris Kleiman in the contest here. I think this conference is down overall, and I think there's a team that we haven't talked about. We'll get to it. I think maybe we did our Big 12 preview, but what I'm alluding to here is I like Texas Tech to win this conference. And I'll say this, Andy, about the Texas Tech thing. When I was in Vegas with you,
100-1 odds to win the national title.
Texas Tech, there you go.
Yeah. So
I was in line signing up for the Superbook contest at the Superbook, and who is in line behind me but B.J. Simons. He was the quarterback for Texas Tech in his day, and we began chatting and had a conversation, and he was showing me his tickets, and how he really kind of unloaded on Texas Tech in a lot of different possible ways and all that. And I mentioned to him that I really liked the team this year because they had more returning starters than anybody this year, 21. But I really like the head coach there too. And I said to him, they don't lose many football games with this head coach. How do the players like him? And he said the players really like him because he lets them do what they want to do. He says a little bit soft on discipline, but he lets them do what he wants to do. And that might be the camaraderie for a team like Texas Tech, what they need to get by everybody else, and what I see is a down season here for the Big 12 this year.
I believe also with Texas Tech, and Greg may be aware of this as well, is that Texas Tech has gotten a huge amount of NIL money from some major donors to the program. Yeah. And I don't know that they're quite up there with Ohio State, but they probably do lead the Big 12.
Well, he did explain that to me. He says our big backer is a billionaire, and he just unloads on this football program here. And he just went out and got everybody we possibly asked for and could get. So that's the reason they outspent just about everybody, at least dollar-wise, for the NIL, and why they project so well with returning starters. Not actually true starters, but starters of players that started from the program they came and they're going to plug in here. So hence all the experience for Texas Tech. And I think they have a great opportunity here to take advantage of all that, particularly with this Big 12 conference being down just a tad this year.
Was he wearing his jersey?
Yes, he was.
That's what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, how did you know B.J. Simon standing in a line?
Well, you strike by conversation. Texas Tech. Oh, you're a Texas Tech.
He's got to have his jersey on with his name on it. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say. He probably was wearing a jersey.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, he wasn't wearing a jersey, but he wore the shirt. Texas Tech. I said, "You're a big Texas Tech fan."
Okay.
And he said, "Yeah, I am. I used to quarterback there." And
All
blah
right.
blah 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 blah. So things went to that.
Close enough.
Yes, it was.
Did you exchange numbers for communication during the season?
Yes, we did. So he'll be reading the playbook this year, and he got his hands on a copy of the magazine. The Westgate Superbook was passing out copies of the magazine, and he was just ecstatic to have his hands on it. So, we'll see if we can make him a playbook convert here this football season.
Is he a regular traveler to Vegas?
I don't know if he's a regular or not, but if I find out he's going there, Andy, I'm going to give you a heads up. And perhaps these two could get together, maybe at the Craft Kitchen. Who knows where?
We'll find out.
Okay, let's take a look at another game on Saturday's card. Western Kentucky is going to host Sam Houston State. It's another conference. Is this a conference matchup, guys? No, I don't believe.
I think it is.
Are they both Sunbelters?
I believe so.
I believe so. Sam Houston is Conference USA.
Yes, correct. It's kind of it's tough.
And so is Western Kentucky.
Yeah.
So
I confuse those two conferences, as I'm sure many people do. The Sun Belt, Conference USA, because they keep changing back and forth from year to year.
Yeah, they do. And
the composition of the conferences.
I understand completely.
Yeah.
Andy, what do you see in these two football teams this year?
Well, I see that both of them are replacing a lot. Western Kentucky, the returning production, according to the playbook preview, number 123, and it's evenly balanced, 116 on offense, 119 on defense. Sam Houston only slightly better, 116, but theirs is more unbalanced. They return their number 69 in what they return on offense, but 135, which is next to last out of the 136 on defense. So both of these teams are basically in a rebuild situation. Sam Houston seems to have a little bit more returning on offense, and that might be a little bit of an advantage in the early part of the season. As I do recall, this is a double revenge game for Sam Houston, their first 2 years at the FBS level. 10.5 seems like a large number of points to be giving a team that showed really great progress last year. They do have a first-year coach, which is always a little bit of a concern, but I generally do like offense in college football, especially at the lower level in the first couple of games of the season, because they've been working on executing their offense throughout the offseason and all that. And defense sometimes is more of a case of it takes time to I call it R&R, recognition and reaction to that. And that seems to be a little bit slower trying to figure out, especially where your teammate's going to be. So I think 10.5 is a reasonable number to take in this game.
Yeah, especially since, like you said, with Longo taking over. Yeah. I mean, this guy was a failed coordinator with Wisconsin. That move really set Wisconsin back. It's not Longo's fault. They should never have been trying to air raid everything at Wisconsin. So now I don't know how he becomes a head coach after that. And Sam Houston was, like you said, Andy, they were setting up nice, but all of a sudden Keeler decided to leave. He headed back east. He's now with Temple. Keep an eye on Temple to win a couple of games this year that you're not expecting. So I think he's an excellent coach. But now Longo takes over. But with Western Kentucky, they do have 2 new coordinators, and they do have a new quarterback. But like you were saying, Andy, you would expect the offense is going to be just fine, because the whole idea with one of the coordinators was they brought in the offensive coordinator and the quarterback from the same school. I think it's Abilene Christian. And so I would expect, since the quarterback understands the offense, I would expect they're going to be just fine. So I would have no problem giving up 10.5 either.
Giving up or taking?
Giving up.
Just
like Andy. Yeah.
Well,
I like Sam Houston plus.
Oh, you're taking the points. I thought you said you like the offense.
Points,
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
I'll break the tie.
Houston's got no offense.
With Andy here as well.
All right.
You have a rare commodity here in Sam Houston State. The second year at the FBS level, and they went out and won double-digit games. I mean, that's almost unheard of for a program to do just that. Now, they might be a little bit too much celebratory this football season after what they did last year, but I still think they feel confident in their attack. They got a high-octane air raid attack. I think they probably put a lot of points up in the scoreboard between these two football teams. I think very little defense is the answer. So we'll put Andy on Sam Houston. We'll put Greg on Western Kentucky. And you can put me on the over in the contest as well.
Okay.
I'll guess for copping out, okay?
Pick one of
So
those.
at least one of the 3 tickets will be cashed.
That's exactly right. All right, Kansas going to host Fresno State. Another favorite coach of ours, Greg, Lance Leipold, is here from the Big 12. And boy, between him and Kleiman, I think they got 2 terrific coaches. They sat out a bowl game last year, however, did Kansas. Jalen Daniels, their quarterback, was also sidelined with a knee injury. Now, Daniels is back this football season, and he's listed in amongst even some Heisman Trophy talk. Now whether or not he can stay healthy enough to be able to realize something like that. He's been a little bit inconsistent, but he really, truly has the arm to get the job done, maybe even arm enough to make it to the National Football League. Andy, how do you see this game shaking down?
I've always liked the Fresno State program going back many, many years. They always seem to be competitive. Every so often they'll throw in a down season. They do have a first-year head coach with Jeff Tedford finally retiring. I believe he had some health issues the last few years, but a new coach taking over. And, once again, we've seen, although it's been a decline over the last few years, still another winning season for Fresno last year, as it had the previous 3 years. Kansas, I've always liked Lance Leipold when he came over from Buffalo and turned around the Kansas program after about a year or two, but it seems to have plateaued a little bit, and they haven't made the kind of progress that I expected when it came into the program, that Kansas would be more of a contender in the Big 12, especially with the new additions to the conference last year and the departures of Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC. So it's a big number to be laying. I wouldn't be surprised. I know they're opening their new stadium in Kansas and all that. Don't think I can play the game because although I like Fresno State, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a big effort out of Kansas. But if I'm just going on the fundamentals and the quality of the two programs and my concerns about Kansas in recent years, I would, if I had to play it, if I want to make a pizza bet or something, it would be on Fresno State plus the points. But I'm not going to play the game.
Well, Greg, what's your take? It's pizza. Are you going to add pepperoni onto that, or are you going to just take a slice?
Probably just a slice.
Okay.
I'm going to agree with Andy on this one because Kansas, again, I agree. They faded it a little bit last year. Daniels coming off the injured 2023 season didn't look as good as we thought he was going to look last year. So maybe he needed a year. Maybe he'll come out 100% healthy and be the player everybody's expecting. But he didn't look like that last year. They were 1-4 straight up and against the spread as a favorite last year. And so I'm a little bit worried about that. They're used to kicking off the season against weak opponents. That's not the case here. I do like Fresno State's head coach. He was the North Dakota State head coach when they won big time at the FCS level, coached at USC last year. So I think he's going to do just fine. And EJ Warner looks like he's the quarterback at Fresno. And he's a good veteran, quarterback, Kurt's son. So he knows how to swing it around. So yeah, maybe the place will be, pretty pumped up being it's a new stadium and all, but that's a lot of points. I agree.
Well, I think it is a lot of points here. I'm going to just allude to the fact that Entz does come in here, first-year head coach, really relatively light on returning production, 112th in the country. That doesn't bode well in a football game like this. But I'm a little bit concerned about Kansas right now as we're speaking before the season begins. One, the Jalen Daniels injury situation, his knee injury. I know he got through spring, but they really watched his time closely and carefully as far as reps were concerned. And they lost a big running back in Devin Neal, who opted to go to the draft. He rushed for 1,266 yards last year. So, whether or not that's going to be a detriment to help along the way for Neal, or Daniel, as I say. But the thing that stands out to me, guys, is for as good and as much as we like the Kansas football head coach here, Lance Leipold, the bottom line is Kansas has missed out on a bowl game 12 of the last 14 years. And here they are laying double digits in a season opening game with a lot of question marks. And just for that reason alone, I have to take the double digits until they check the box and answer those question marks. So you can put me down for Fresno State in this contest. Okay, guys, let's wrap it up here. We got another game here, and I think Greg and I both have a pretty good opinion on this. We're going to find out about Andy. Hawaii is going to play host to Stanford in a season opening game this year, in a game that probably would normally have meant a whole lot more to Hawaii than it did Stanford, being who they are, and Stanford having formerly been out of the Big 12 or Pac-12, I should say. But suddenly, this Stanford team is slip cotter pins, and they're losing wheels, and they're really going backward here right now. Andy, how do you see Hawaii and Stanford coming about the final in this football game on Saturday?
I've gone back and forth on this game because Stanford, of course, had a down season last year, but a lot of it, they were just into the ACC. They had the cross-country trips and all that. They weren't a very strong program to begin with, but at least they're a little bit more comfortable with what they know they have to face this year. I like Timmy Chang at Hawaii. Hasn't had the kind of success they would have had, but he has shown slight improvement over the last few years. They don't play 13 games this year. They just play, I believe it's the 12, of which 7 are at home. It's a small number. Again, it's probably my least favorite of the 4 games this weekend, especially because, if I recall, Stanford, I believe, opened up a very slight favorite, and now they're about a 2.5 point underdog. So I'd still lean to Hawaii. Of the 4, like I say, it's the one I'm least likely to play, as long as it's under a field goal. And if you don't mind accepting a push, you could lay the 3.
Yeah, I like Hawaii in this one, and it's really a couple of reasons. One, as I said in my show last week, the Friday Pigskin show I did on the Group of 5 and top sleepers, and they were a part of that. They were one of my top sleepers in the Group of 5. So I expect their best year under Timmy Chang, and everybody's excited about the quarterback Alejandro, because this kid put together a monster game late in the season, and so because of that. There's and most people believe it's not a fluke. I mean, this kid's very cerebral, little kid, but hey, he's at Hawaii and it's Stanford. So we're not talking about them facing Alabama. And we know how bad Stanford's been. And Frank Reich hasn't head coach at college. He hasn't done this before. There's a lot of new stuff going on. I'd just be surprised if Stanford, in Frank Reich's first game, with everything that's gone wrong at Stanford the last few years, just goes on the road and beats an improving good Hawaii team.
I concur, Greg. When we wrote this up in the Playbook newsletter, we labeled this as our underdog upset special, and that was because Hawaii was the underdog in the football game. I think people read through all that. They've gone to the small favorite in the contest here, and I can completely understand why. Frank Reich, you mentioned, comes in here to take over the struggling Stanford football program, but he come over in late March. He really got a late start with this football program. He didn't. It would have been nice if they assigned him at the end of the season and he'd be able to build a little bit more, but that's not the case. He's got to kind of hurry up and get his horse into the gate, per se, if you will. And they were also beat up with player departures in the transfer portal here and a head coaching scandal. That's the reason that Reich took over here. I think those are all detriments that work against Stanford. And remember, Stanford has been 3-9 each of the last 4 years in a row. 3-9, 3-9, 3-9, 3-9. It doesn't bode well for a football program to open up their season in Hawaii and to forget to take their suntan lotion there. My goodness, I think this is a bad spot for Stanford here, getting things, trying to get things evened out here. And you've also got Hawaii has been 11-2 to the number in season opening games against FBS opponents the last 13 times, 9-1 to the spread in that role when they're playing with revenge. I think Hawaii makes a statement in this game, and I'll be back in the Rainbow Warriors in this contest as well.
And by the way, last year they barely lost to UCLA in the same setup. They had an FCS game in their first one, Hawaii did, but week 2, they were a 14-point home dog to UCLA, and they lost a very close game. Yes. And this is a much weaker Stanford team. By the way, Frank Reich is still basically an interim head coach. Okay, so
he hasn't signed a contract then.
No,
right?
Not as far as I've heard.
Okay.
So as far as I've heard is he basically took the job, and the reason it was late is because he's just doing the program a favor. Let me get in there. Let me try to fix things here and hold the fort while you go and find a head coach.
Well, there's a lot of holes he's got to plug in this fort.
Yeah.
It's leaking. It's leaking right now. So, we'll see how this comes out.
I believe Andrew Luck has an awful lot to do with it. What's he, like a consultant or something? Maybe even athletic
general manager, probably, Andy.
Yeah,
that's what they call
I think that's what he's got a lot to do, and I think there is some sort of history connection between Frank Reich and Andrew Luck, probably from some time with the Colts.
That would make sense.
Hey, guys, before we get it over to the NFC preview here, just a little sidebar note on the NFL preseason. It wraps up this week number 3, the third of 3 weeks. And I came across this. I want to share it with our listeners out there that NFL teams who do not play starters in week 3 of the preseason, they're going to have 22 days off between this week and game 1 of the regular season. And just noting that, I would think if I'm a head coach, I've got to get some playing time for some of my starters here this week. I don't want them to be really rusty.
At least a series or two.
Absolutely. If we see Matthew Stafford play this week, I know he's coming back, weaning his way back from injury. And he's never, ever saw a second of play in the preseason since Sean McVay has been there. If he ends up taking a snap or two, you'll know that that's the reason why they just don't want to endure this possible rust between 3 weeks off between this end of this preseason this week and the start of the NFL football season next week.
Well, by the way, you look at the Rams with what you were mentioning, and they've gotten off to slow starts the last few seasons, and that may have something to do with the lack of Matthew Stafford seeing any preseason action, especially when it's down to 3 weeks as opposed to the old 4-week preseason.
Yeah, just much like we see with the Cincinnati Bengals, who appear to be putting an effort this football season, probably largely to overcome these terribly, horrifically slow starts that they've had. Let me set the table here, guys, for the NFC preview here. And the top 6 teams out of the NFC to make the Super Bowl, this is what they say. 6 of these teams will be representing the NFC. Number 1 at the top in the pole position is the Philadelphia Eagles, last year's defending Super Bowl champion. They're plus 700, followed by the Detroit Lions at plus 1,100. The Washington Commanders, a little bit of a surprise at plus 2,000.
I thought you were showing the Lions at plus 500 on the screen.
Oh, that's the NFC.
Oh, to win the NFC?
Yeah. Are you talking about Super Bowl, Mark?
I'm talking about Super Bowl odds right now. Yes. Right.
Yeah, these are the NFC odds I have.
Okay.
Washington Commanders plus 2,000. Also, 49ers and the Packers all each plus 2,000. And it wraps up with the Rams at plus 2,200. So those are the first 6 teams.
And by the way, let me just mention this for the listeners or the viewers who may not be familiar. When you say plus 2,000, that's 20 to 1.
That's exactly right.
Not 2,000 to 1. And I don't know why they show it that way. The plus 950, I can understand, but about 9.5 to 1 or something like that to make it less confusing.
I think they figure because based on an average $100 wager.
Yeah.
That's all I can figure. Philadelphia Eagles are 7 to 1, and actually not plus 700, but that's what it ends up being.
And Europe does it differently, right? What do they use? How do they use their numbers? Europe.
I don't know. Do they use very often? I've seen it like 13 to 4.
Yeah, they use odds.
Which would be like plus, I think, 325 or something like that.
Yeah, they'll use the fractions in Europe. Yeah, because they're better at fractions than we are in the United States.
Okay, I'm right with that. Sure. I know.
Is that a comment on our school systems?
It might well be. I'm not going to go that far. I don't want to get political, but it might well be. We're falling a little bit behind here right now at the moment, so we'll see what that happens. Let's take it over to the division, guys, because that's what we're going to be talking about. We're going to break each of these divisions down. And let's start first. We'll do I'll mention these odds, and then we'll tear the division apart. In the NFC East, the Philadelphia Eagles obviously favored at minus 135. Their season win total for the year is 11.5, shaded the under minus 130. It's the Washington Commanders' second pick in the NFC East at plus 220. Their over-under total is 9.5, shaded a little bit to the over at minus 125. The Dallas Cowboys at plus 550, over under 8.5, shaded big time to the under at minus 145. And finally, the New York Giants, who is no surprise at plus 2,200, and their over under total is shaded at 5.5, over minus 125. Greg, your take on the NFC East, and we know it's been 20 years since a team has repeated as a champion in the NFC East. Can or will Philadelphia do it again this year?
If it wasn't for McLaurin for the issues they're having there, I would have definitely just been all over Washington to win the division based on that trend you're talking about, and that Washington is the perfect foil, or you should say maybe the perfect team to continue that trend. And I might even say the same thing about the Cowboys if Micah Parsons was still there, and I get what's going on with both players. Unless they're traded, both players will be suiting up week 1 for their respective teams. They're not holding out. They're not giving up all that money. They're just not doing it. It never happens. It's happened once, and look what happened in that scenario. So they don't want to do that. But in saying that, there's a distraction there. So I am a little bit concerned with that. But because of that, I probably will stick with Washington because, again, I expect McLaurin to be there. And if not, if he's traded, then maybe they'll get something in return. And that's really just saying something against the Eagles because of the fact we all know how hard it is not only to repeat in the NFC East, but just repeat in general, unless you're like a superstar team like the Patriots or even the Chiefs. And the Eagles are not that. They've got some defensive problems in the secondary, like really big problems in the secondary. They should be strong up front. I give them that. That's they're going to need to be strong up front, but they're also counting on several new players up front. So can't just automatically say they're going to be lethal up front when they're counting on players, but I suspect they'll be fine. And offensively, they should be fine too. They do have an injury on the offensive line to keep an eye on. They've got, Becton, I don't think is a huge loss. And I suspect they'll be fine there, but yeah, their schedule, by the way, I don't know if you've really looked at it, is really hard. Yes. I mean, that's one of the hardest schedules I have seen. I think they got the toughest schedule in all of the NFL. I can't imagine anybody else has the tougher schedule than the Eagles. And the Giants, you know what? I'm not sure. I know they're probably not going to win the division, but I think they're going to be a lot better than this 22-1 to win the division deal. They're so talented up front. They've got one of the better pass rush talent in all the NFL, and throwing in some stability at the quarterback position. We could say what you want about Wilson, but he'll bring stability, and that's important. They haven't had that in a while. So I suspect the Giants are going to be a lot better than people think, and I think the division is going to kind of crunch a little bit. Philly's not going to run away with anything, but I'll take Washington. I'll just stick with the trend.
Washington to win the division, Greg DePalma. Andy Iskoe, how do you see the East wrapping up this football season?
Well, if you take a look at Philadelphia, they've been to the Super Bowl 2 of the last 3 years, winning one and then losing one, both against Kansas City. And the year in between, 2023, they had those internal issues. Remember, they were replacing both the offensive and defensive coordinators after being in that previous Super Bowl. But something must have happened because they got off to a 10-1 start. So anyone who says it was the offensive and defensive coordinators, I'm not buying that argument because they helped them get off to a 10-1 start. Even though there were a lot of close games there, they still managed to win them. And then you go back and they had that Super Bowl win in at the 2017 season. So you're talking about a team that's been to 2 Super Bowls in the last 3 years and 3 Super Bowls in the last 8 years. So I'm not, they may have been in this period the second best team in the NFL based upon their Super Bowl appearances to Kansas City. It was the end of the New England dynasty at that point. And in fact, that's who the Eagles beat in that Super Bowl with the Philly special and Doug Peterson, who ended up having some issues with the team. But I like Philadelphia to end that 20-year drought. And if you recall, Mark, I believe it's correct, Philadelphia was that last team to win back-to-back division titles in the NFC East. I'm looking for a little bit of a regression from the Washington Commanders. They were involved in so many one-possession games at the end of last year that usually reverses itself. And I guess the best example of that was the Minnesota Vikings, and I think it was the 2022 season when they had all those close wins. I want to say it was like 14 or 13 or something like that, or maybe it was 11, whatever it was. They regressed the following year. I think Washington will still be a very good team. I do agree with Greg. I do think McLaurin will be there. They do have some new weapons as well. But I'm just looking for, I don't know if we're going to see a collapse out of Daniel, but what he did last year, it's going to be very, very difficult for him not to exceed it, but to even match what he did last year. And other teams have had an entire offseason to prepare. So I'm actually going to go with in that division. I do like the Giants. I think they're going to make a big move. I actually like them second in that division this year. Washington third. And I think this is going to be, unless they get this thing with Micah Parsons out and everyone's saying, and the coach is confident that he's going to be playing in week 1. But what do you expect the coach to say? No, we're planning on not having him until October or whatever. So I don't really buy that. But there's just, Dak is always an injury concern. It's getting to be an older team in many respects. Just take a look at their at their win-loss total for the Dallas Cowboys. Now, yeah, it's the third in the division ahead of the Giants. Giants are at 5.5 at the circa, and the Commanders, I think, are 9.5, and of course the Eagles are double digits. But you look at the Cowboys, their win total, and it sort of reflects that there's a little bit of a concern there. 7.5. They are not only expecting them to not be a 500 team this year, they're expecting them to be effectively an 8 or 9 or 7 and 10 team if that number comes out close. So I'm going with the Eagles to win the division, followed by the Giants and the Commanders, all of whom I think will have winning records, and then finally Dallas.
Well, we've got 2 votes. We've got both the Philadelphia Eagles, the Washington Commanders. I will say I will not be riding with Philadelphia this year off of the Super Bowl win last year. I know they're highly targeted, and I think perhaps arguably you can make a real good case that Nick Sirianni is really, really disrespected in the sense of quality head coaches. All he's done is win since he's taken over the Eagles. He gets no respect, which he can maybe play on that and take that maybe perhaps to another Super Bowl. I think he'll make the playoffs, but I don't think he's going to win the Super Bowl here. Number one, I don't believe they're going to win this division. Number two, I agree with Andy. I think the Commanders have got bounce written all over them this football season here. Jaden Daniels surprised everybody, and I think it's a classic case of a rookie quarterback with sophomore blues in the next football season here. The New York Giants are a football team that are a little bit interesting to me. I often talk about teams that outperform statistically their record, and the New York Giants were a football team that did that last year. They improved their stats offensively and defensively, but went down straight up and against the spread. That makes them a look-at team this football season here this year, just on that alone. I also like the New York Giants football team here. I know they play the toughest schedule. Andy alluded to that, or maybe Greg did. It is indeed the number one toughest schedule on the National Football League. But I like what they've got going on there in New York here. A little bit better this year than I have in years past. But the guy I'm going to zero on to win this division is the Dallas Cowboys this year. And you might say, oh, my God, Jerry Jones, Dallas Cowboys struggling, yada, 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 and all those bad things. But you got a real bargain for an over-under season win total on this team. And go back and look at Dallas. Whenever they've been able to rebound real well off losing seasons. You go back to the last 5 losing seasons here. I got these numbers here. The last 5 losing seasons, they went 28-53 combined. In follow-up years, they went 52-29 in bounce-back type roles for the Dallas Cowboys, a role I believe that they'll find themselves comfortable in this year. And also, to me, last year, 7 of their 10 losses were of the one-score variety. You get a healthy Dak Prescott here this football season here. I think this football team has got surprise written all over it this year. I know they're going to be nasty. They're going to be angry. I'm going to put the Dallas Cowboys to pull the upset and win the NFC East.
Very nice. I like to hear that. We got get a little bit of a surprise, and we've all taken different teams. Andy, I guess the question I have for you is, are the Giants making the playoffs, even though you could hold off until next week when we give all of our playoff picks?
Yeah, I'm going to wait till next week. I think they will be in contention for a playoff spot deep in the season, but I haven't decided if I'm going to look at them to yet make the playoffs.
Yeah, keep in mind
I just need them to win 6 games.
Okay. Yeah. So that's next week. Don't forget, 1:00 Thursday, 1 Eastern. We are going to have all of our predictions on the playoffs, Super Bowl, things of that nature. Jim Feist will be with us. He'll give his picks. So that'll be fun next week, Mark.
Yeah, I'd say Jim's out with a COVID. He went back to Cleveland to do some health checkup at the Cleveland Clinic and come down with COVID.
How ironic is that?
Really?
He takes the trip to Cleveland, the Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland to get healthy, and he gets COVID.
Yeah,
that's Cleveland.
Go easy, Andy. Go easy. We've heard enough of it about the Cleveland Browns.
We get to them next week, right?
Yes. I hope so.
Well, we get to everybody next week.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a look at the NFC North, the Black and Blue division, or what was formerly known as the Black and Blue division. We've got the Detroit Lions as the team to beat in this division at plus 160. Their over-under win total is 10.5, shaded minus 130 to the under. Followed by the Green Bay Packers, a little bit of a surprise at plus 250 is the second choice. Their over-under is 9.5 minus 120, or over minus 120. Then it's the Minnesota Vikings at plus 300 at 9.5 under minus 125. And finally, the Chicago Bears at plus 500 8.5 wins under 135. And before I hand it over to you, Andy, the thing that jumps out to me with these division odds for this particular division, the worst team in the division is plus 500, which sort of alludes to the fact that this division is not a runaway by anybody, despite the fact that the Detroit Lions rest in the division. How do you see this division shaking out this year?
Well, let me. One of the things I like to do when we do these kind of analyses is see what the odds makers think about the relative strengths of the divisions. And the best indicator that I come up with is what are their projected win totals. And I take a look at the overall division. So, for example, the NFC East, if you add up all their projected wins, and I'm using Circa. Circa, by the way, their sheets and their odds, they have three numbers. They have two alternatives. In other words, I'll use as an example the let's see, the Giants are 5.5. That's the standard number. That's the number that I use. If you want to be aggressive, you can play over 6.5 for the and get a better price on the plus. If you want to be a little bit less aggressive and you want to go over 4.5, you're going to lay a price. So I use the mid price, which is pretty equivalent around town. And the other thing that Circuit does, by the way, which is kind of interesting, all 32 teams are listed at half points, meaning you're not going to push any of them as you might at some other places. They tend to adjust the VIG rather than adjust it by half if the line gets too out of whack. So when I take a look at that, the NFC East is 34-34. As you would expect of the four divisions in the NFC, in fact, of the 8 divisions in football, the NFC North is expected to be the best of the 8 divisions. That's reflected in the fact that, like you just mentioned, Mark, that the worst team or the team projected to finish 4th, according to the odds, is only plus 500, meaning that they still have some sort of a chance. 38-30 plus, 38-30. So 8 games over 500. Now, obviously, those 8 games over 500 come from non-division matchups, which is another tool to use. You look at their non-division schedules as opposed to the division schedules when coming up with the overall net plus and minus. I think it's going to be a very competitive division, and I've sort of struggled with how I want to do it. I actually like the Minnesota Vikings. I like the quarterback situation. I think McCarthy has a nice future. Now, I have mentioned in the past, I do like the Bears in that first Monday night game, and they are now the underdog. The Bears started out a slight favorite. They're now a 1.5-point dog, and don't know which way that'll go. But I do like the Bears because you are going up in what is essentially a rookie quarterback with McCarthy, who missed all of last year with his training camp injury. So I do like the Vikings. I think the Lions are not going to be as strong. They still have a solid running game, and of course, Goff is determined to be, has turned out to be a pretty good quarterback. But how much are they going to miss Ben Johnson, who's now the head coach of the Bears? So I've got Detroit finishing 2nd. I've got the Packers finishing 3rd, and I like the Bears. Even though I have them 4th, I could still see this team making some huge strides this year. Possibly their over under total is 8.5. So that basically says this is a borderline wild card contender, and I wouldn't be surprised if the Bears go 8-9, fall just short of that over under. But then again, maybe Ben Johnson can work some miracles there. But I think this is the best balanced, the deepest, most competitive division. But I'm going Minnesota, Detroit, Green Bay, Chicago.
Greg, Andy's got Minnesota up on top with J.J. McCarthy. What do you think?
I agree with him. I like Minnesota. I don't think they get enough respect. O'Connell is one of the better coaches in the league, especially on offense, and he doesn't have to worry about the defense because Brian Flores is one of the best defensive coordinators in the league. That's a hell of a combination, and that's something that Campbell doesn't have anymore at Detroit. His coordinators are gone, and I don't care what anybody says. That's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt him big time. And those aren't just coordinators. Those are top-rated coordinators, and you just can't replace those guys. Also, Detroit loses their starting center, one of the best in the league, retired. They still have to hope that Hutchinson comes back 100%. So far, so good. They have not gotten McNeil back, one of the best rising defensive tackles in the league. He's still on the mend. So there's a lot of questions on Detroit, just too much for me, considering they were neck and neck with Minnesota all the way to the end of the season. And now I think, Minnesota has a different quarterback. I get it, but that was Sam Darnold. I'm sorry, but if O'Connell can get Sam Darnold to play like that, he certainly can get J.J. McCarthy to play like that. So I expect that to happen. I expect Minnesota to win. I don't know how much farther Detroit will fall back, so I'll keep them in second for now. Green Bay maybe tied with Detroit for second. Yeah, I think it's going to be a rebuilding year in a way for Chicago. Not a full rebuild, of course. There's a lot of talent there, but there's still also a lot of holes. They and the quarterback position. It's going to take Caleb Williams all season, I think, to figure out Ben Johnson and what he wants to do. He'll have his good moments, but I think he's still going to have a lot of just, head scratching moments. And that's why I think out of these four teams, I believe they're clearly the fourth out of the four. So I'm gonna agree with Andy. I'm gonna take Minnesota to win the division.
2 Minnesota votes here on the NFC North. I'm going to go a little bit, just shake it up just a little bit here. I do like the Vikings. What I don't like is the fact that they won 14 games last year, and the offense actually went backwards a little bit statistically last football season here. And it's all going to be about whether or not J.J. McCarthy was the right pick in the draft. And everything we're reading, O'Connell is really, really in love with this quarterback here. So they're banking a lot on him. And I know when he came out of high school, he was a 5-star recruit, and he could well be the Jalen Daniels of this year's National Football League quarterback crop. But I'm going to go a different direction here. I'm going to go to a team that I don't think gets enough respect. And that team is the Green Bay Packers. And when I say gets enough respect, I'm talking about Matt LaFleur, their head coach. All he does is win football games. What is he? Let me get my preview guide out here so I can back up what I'm saying here. Yeah, he's won 10 and 11 games the last 2 football seasons. He improved both offensively and defensively statistically last year. This football program did. And I think this division personally is wide open. I'm fading the Detroit Lions for a lot of the reasons Greg just outlined. I mentioned this before in podcasts previously in the past, that Detroit is one of only 6 teams in NFL history to finish with in their total net points scored and allowed to be in the top 6. Teams you can't maintain that level of play, and I think they're going to end up bouncing there that way. So a slight lean to me to the Green Bay Packers. I still think the division is wide open, but I'm just not quite ready to jump on that 14-win Minnesota team with this still yet unproven rookie quarterback.
By the way, just to remind everybody, I will be interviewing Jeff Risdon tonight. He does a great job covering the Detroit Lions. They've got a podcast on YouTube called the Detroit Lions Podcast. But he has a website you could check out. So that'll be at 8:30 tonight. I'll interview Jeff. And of course, I'm going to be much nicer to the Detroit Lions when I'm on with Jeff than I just was.
Is he a homer primarily, Greg?
No. But he definitely, look, I mean, it was great because I loved our conversations because I started talking to him like 3 or 4 years ago when they were a bad team. They were still in the midst of being an awful franchise. So we went through the whole, growth progressive deal. So I am going to be interested to find out when it's all said and done how he feels this year, the way that I think outsiders feel, and whether or not maybe a little homerism will, bleed in. So we'll find out.
Okay, guys, let's get to the NFC South here. And this is another division that, aside from the obvious, New Orleans Saints may be arguably the worst team in the NFL this year. We'll find that out. But the other 3 teams are good. The top 2 teams are even better. And I think it's a battle between Tampa Bay and the Atlanta Falcons. Andy, what's your thoughts here?
You talked about in the NFC Central, the team that doesn't get the kind of love that perhaps it deserves, being Green Bay. How about the same thing for Tampa Bay? I mean, they've been a very, very solid team for a number of years. They won the Super Bowl when Tom Brady, came in there for that 1 year, 2 years, I guess. But they've managed to carry that momentum over for the next few years, and they've been a perennial playoff team for about half a decade. And I think that continues this year. I think Tampa Bay is the best team in the division. I think I have Atlanta second, and I think the gap has narrowed, and I think that Atlanta might be a contender for the playoffs this year. In fact, looking at their win total, you got Tampa Bay at 9.5, and the Falcons are priced at 7.5. Which I believe is second best, because then you go down to the Panthers at 6.5 and the Saints at 5.5. So, that's a nice number for the Buccaneers at 9.5, because you're basically saying this team is capable well, that's a 2-game edge over Atlanta as far as the season win total goes, and you're basically seeing 10-7 winning the division, and that's not unusual. So I do like. In fact, I like the order in which the odds makers have the season wins. I've got Tampa Bay number 1, Atlanta number 2, Carolina number 3, and New Orleans number 4. I have Tampa Bay as the division winner, and I have Atlanta as a potential wild card contender.
Andy likes them the way that they're stacked up by the odds. Tampa Bay, Atlanta, Carolina, and New Orleans. Greg, how do you see the South shaking out this year?
How about this for a nice little close division, Mark? The Falcons are off their 7th straight losing season, and they have not won a division title since 2016. That was their Super Bowl season. And then if you just take a look at Carolina, the Panthers are off their 7th straight losing season, finishing in the bottom half of the division, 6 of the last 7. And they have not won a division title since 2015, their Super Bowl season. So it's really interesting that both of those teams, Atlanta and Carolina, of course, they didn't win the Super Bowl, but they got there. It's been that long for both of these programs. But I do think that I really do. I think both teams are going to break that this year. And I think it's going to be a lot closer. And part of the problem is I'm starting to get a little bit worried with Tampa Bay's injury situation. I don't think it's going to change my mind with picking Tampa because I've picked them for the last several years. Ever since Baker's been there, I keep picking them. So I'm not going to run away from that now. But I am definitely a little bit concerned that injuries like that are just starting to perk up a little too much one by one. So keep an eye on that. Carolina is going to be my team to finish second, though. I'm going to take I think the Panthers are going to be one of the sleeper teams in the NFC. They finally got a top number 1 receiver. Leggett now moves into number 2. Thielen's still chugging along, and it's nice to see Hunter Renfrow looking like the old Hunter Renfrow. The offensive line is one of the most underrated offensive lines in the league. They can run the ball now. With both Dowdle and Hubbard. Bryce Young, we saw what he did at the end of the last season, making big strides under David Canales. And they loaded up on really good free agent additions on defense. Their defense was so bad last year. A lot of that had to do with Derek Brown's injury. But he's healthy, and they added like 4 or 5 really important start caliber free agent additions. So that's going to help them too. So yeah, I'm going to go with Carolina in second. I'll take Atlanta in a very close third. If not, Atlanta, Carolina tied for second, that sort of thing. And the Saints probably, I might, it'd be interesting if we had a discussion on who we think is the worst team in the NFL, who will get the first pick in the draft. Right. Saints are definitely in that discussion.
Well, sure, for sure they're in that discussion.
By the way, excuse me 1 second, just to follow up on the divisional records. Of the 8 divisions, the NFC South is the lowest rated by the odds makers in terms of season win totals. They are at 29 and 39. In fact, the only division expected to combine for the 4 teams less than 30 wins.
Hence, a losing team maybe represents the NFC South with a losing record. Anyway, it hasn't been that way for the Tampa Bay Bucks. The Rodney Dangerfield of the National Football League. All they do is win their division, seems like year after year after year, and they keep making the playoffs. And they don't get a lot of respect for doing just that, which means that they're also the targeted team. They want to make a case to try and knock them back a notch or two. And I think they'll be in the running again this football season here. I think it's going to right down to the wire with Tampa Bay and the team that I like to win the division, the Atlanta Falcons, this football season. I was a little bit odd to hear that they've lost was a 7 straight losing seasons in a row, Greg said. I didn't know it was that bad. But I think this all changes with Michael Penix Jr. And I had heard an interview with Terry Fontenot, their general manager, and what a brilliant mind he has. And he had Michael Penix Jr. circled as a targeted pick in that draft, while it was a surprise to everybody that he moved up to nab him at number 1, I think with the 9th pick. It wasn't to him because he had evaluated Penix Jr. all throughout his college football career. And go look at what he did with the programs that he was at along the way and how he completely turned those programs around. Indiana and I believe Washington, their win-loss records were day and night different when Penix was there and Penix was not there. And I think he'll be given the full chance to do that this year. I can't believe that they haven't decided yet between Kirk Cousins and Penix Jr. because of the big investment they've made in Penix here. And I'm almost certain it will be him. And if it is him, I'm riding the Atlanta Falcons. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, as I mentioned here, will be right in the mix, and probably maybe they'll have to earn their spot into the NFL playoffs this year with wins as opposed to winning just the division alone. The Carolina Panthers, I still think they're going to be better, but I still think they've got a way to come. And the Saints we've all talked about. Correct me, Greg or Andy, did I review the division odds for the NFC South? I don't recall if I did or didn't.
Well, I have them right here.
Okay.
It's on the screen.
Okay, good. Okay, but they're on the screen.
Yep.
You'll see the Bucs are the favorite, minus 115 to win this division, followed by Atlanta, Carolina, and New Orleans. So put me down for the Atlanta Falcons, being the dog lover that I am, to win the NFC South. Let's wrap it up, guys, with the NFC West. A division here that, again, I mentioned before about how tight things were. I believe it was the division, the NFC North, where the Bears were the lowest guy in the totem pole at plus 500. Well, we've got Seattle, the lowest guy in the totem pole, on the NFC West at plus 550. It doesn't look like there's a runaway in this particular division. Andy, who do you see winning the NFC West?
And he's disconnected right now, so I guess I'll take it.
Okay. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have too many questions for San Francisco right now. This is such a tight. I think any of these teams can win this division, and therefore, why would I go with the favorite? There's just too many questions with San Francisco right now. Their wide receiver room is completely banged up. The defense is there. There's some questions there. I know they got Robert Saleh back, and that's always going to be a nice addition. That's I was wondering about that defensive side of the ball last year, and they definitely took a step in the wrong direction. So that'll help them. Look, they're well coached. They got a good general manager. They're a well-run franchise, but I just think there's just a lot of questions on San Francisco right now, and a lot of that have to do with injuries. So I can't just go that way, not in this situation, the way that I can if I want to go ahead and jump on a team like the Rams, or a 2-1, or even a surprise like Arizona or Seattle. And if I was going to take a surprise team, I'd probably take Seattle. Now, I'm not going to take Seattle to win the division. I'm going to take the Rams. But I actually might go with the Rams first and Seattle second. I think Seattle is going to have a real shot at this division. So I think this might be the toughest contested division in all the NFL. I think it could be 2 games separating 1 through 4.
And what happens, Greg, if the Cardinals and the Seahawks improve? It'll be even tougher.
Yeah.
In that sense, and it could quite possibly be. I think this division is sort of up for grabs. I'm going to run with the 49ers. What I don't like is the price. They're pricing them like they're the 49ers of old. But the unique thing is they're the only team in the NFL the last 3 years that's finished the season ranked in the top 10 offensively and defensively. San Francisco is. They met with their woes last year, a lot of it because of injuries again. But if Kyle Shanahan gets back to what it is that he does best, that's run the football, control the time of possession, and play a little bit of semblance of defense, I think he can get the job done here this year. So I'm going to ride with the 49ers to win this particular division this year. The Rams, I'm going to look at them also I think it goes right down to the wire between these two teams, and followed up by the Cardinals and the Seahawks. Andy, I know we missed you a little bit there. I'm going to bring you in to wrap up the NFC West. I
heard both you and Greg, and I'm sort of like with both of you. I'm not all that thrilled with the 49ers this year. I mean, forget last season when they had all the injuries, but when you have all those injuries, they're still a concern the following season. There's no Deebo Samuel anymore, who was a contributor, including out of the backfield. I think he'll be missed. McCaffrey, he's had a history of injury problems going back to his days at Carolina. That's a concern. Kittle is getting old and talking retirement. The defense needs a little bit of work. I like the Rams quite a bit. Yeah, Stafford is dealing with the back issues, but that should be resolved. He's back in practice and everything, and they're going to be careful with him. And remember, the Rams started what were they 2-4 last year, and they went on that lengthy, solid run to make the playoffs, and took Philadelphia down to the final minute before falling in that game in the snow in the second half. So I do like the Rams to win this division. I think McVay is another one of those coaches that does not get the kind of recognition that he deserves. He's been a very solid coach since he's been there, been to a Super Bowl, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's back playing a Super Bowl this year. I don't know that really. I mean, maybe Philadelphia stands a little bit above everybody else, but you could name any number of teams, 2 or 3 teams that might be the next in line in the NFC, and I think the Rams would be in that conversation. I still have the 49ers based on talent finishing second in the division, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams win the division by 2 games, maybe even 3. I do like Seattle. I do like the coach there. I do like, we saw the quarterback last year, Darnold, have a really good season in Minnesota if he can shake off those last 2 games. And, that was the end of a long season. He had, before those games, he had 13, 14 really good games with the Vikings. So that's not really a concern for me right now. And Arizona is their muddling, 8-9, 9-8, 7-10 type of season. I've got them finishing 4th. In fact, I think in that division, the team that I think I like the most for an underplay, I like the 49ers under 10.5 wins, and I like the Cardinals under 8.5 wins in that division. Let me say, I think I played the Rams at over 9.5, laying some vig on that one. So I've got it Rams, 49ers, Seahawks, Cardinals.
What's unusual, guys, is this division almost mimics, if you will, price-wise, over/under win totals and pricing the NFC North. The Lions are at the top at 10.5 wins. Frisco on top here at 10.5 wins. Bears.
By the way, the West overall 36 and 32 collectively, +4. Second best behind the North.
Bears 8.5 wins, last place in the league in the division. Seahawks 8.5 wins, last place in the division here. And you've also got the Rams, the second best team, 9.5 win total. You're also talking about the Packers, 9.5 win total here. So there's a lot of semblance between these two divisions, the North and the West. We're going to wrap it up.
I'd love to see some sportsbook, whether it be here in Vegas, offshore, or both, have a prop up there, and they'll have the odds there. Which team will finish with the best which division will finish with the best non-divisional record of the 8 divisions, and which will finish with the worst? Obviously, looking on the numbers that I just pointed out, these preseason numbers, which don't necessarily translate into what's going to happen, is the we'll get to them next week, but the AFC West and the NFC North are both 38 and 30 collectively, according to the odds makers. The 2 worst teams, as you would divisions, would you expect the AFC South at 30 and 38, the NFC South at 29 and 39. I think that'd make for an interesting prop, and there are a lot of creative props that have been added recently in recent years where you can actually make wagers on a best team and worst team. In fact, the Westgate, and Mark, you probably saw it last week, you can now pick you can now bet on which team will have the most wins, which team will have the fewest wins. And not only that, and I've always talked about the exactas, a Super Bowl exacta that I've been doing for a number of years at Circa. Westgate has added that this year, and they've also added, and this, I don't know that it's a great bet, but you can bet for each team the exact number of wins that team will get. And they'll obviously have some nice little odds, 25, 30 to 1. If you think like the Arizona Cardinals, whose win total, I think I said was 8.5. If they win, if you think they're going to win 11 games, you'll get a nice payoff. If you think they're going to only win 5 games, you might get a nice payoff as well. So there are a lot of these more, let's call it interesting propositions that are being offered season after season. They increase, and there can be some value if you do some pretty good off-season analysis.
All right, guys, let's wrap it up here, and we'll close it out with this. At the beginning of the show, I had mentioned the top 6 teams by the odds inside the NFC. Obviously, their choices to make the NFL playoffs, those being the Eagles, Lions, Commanders, 49ers, Packers, and Rams. I'm going to ask you, both of you guys each, who is that 7th team to make it from the NFC into the playoffs? It could be a surprise team, a long shot, somebody that isn't listed on that list there of the top 6. Greg, who's your 7th team to make it into the NFC playoffs?
Okay, so you've got Eagles, Lions, Washington, San Francisco, Green Bay, and the Rams.
That's correct.
All right. Well, I guess it's between Minnesota and Tampa Bay. So if I had to choose between one of the two, and I guess
I know you're looking for the price. You're going to go right to the price.
No, I'm actually realizing that I'm just trying to figure out, because there's multiple division teams. So I guess it wouldn't really work out this way because you have to put Tampa Bay in there because there's no NFC South team. That's what I was looking at.
That's correct.
So I would put Tampa Bay in there if we're going by that strategy.
I was going to do the same thing, but for a slightly different reason. I think Tampa Bay has a better chance of winning their division and making it in than Minnesota has of winning its division and
Sure.
making it in as a division winner or the seventh team, because Minnesota has those three division rivals of Green Bay, Chicago, and Detroit. Whereas really, and you look at the NFC South, Tampa Bay's main competition is Atlanta, and then there appears to be a drop off to Carolina and New Orleans. So for that reason, I would choose Minnesota. I would choose Tampa Bay over Minnesota, though I think both of them will make the playoffs.
And I'll put the icing on the cake here, guys. I'm going to put the Dallas Cowboys, my choice to surprise in the NFC East, to be the seventh team. It would be the seventh if they win the division. They're obviously not going to be the seventh seed, but I think they'll be one of the 7 teams inside the NFC to make the playoffs this year. And if I had to back it up with a team that maybe wouldn't win the division, who I think they will, but wouldn't make the playoffs, I'm going to go roll right back into the Atlanta Falcons. So I kind of think it's up for grabs. A lot of teams here this year. I think there's some teams that will be disappointing. At the top of my disappointment list will be the Detroit Lions this football season here. Greg, Andy, we'll get out of here. Who are your most disappointing team that you'll see in the NFL this year?
Oh, in the NFC?
In the NFC, yes, I'm sorry.
Most disappointing. Yeah, I mean, Detroit is definitely right up there. I might even say San Francisco. They're up there too as far as the odds are concerned. So yeah, maybe I think those 2 teams, and I might even say the Eagles just because of the price they're at. They're such a low price at 3-1. But if we're just going without the price, then I'll say, I'll agree with you. I'll say Detroit.
Andy?
Yeah, that's a tough one because there are so many teams that come to mind as far as being disappointments, and that's reflected in the odds. I'm going to go with, I had the finish in the NFC East. I had Philadelphia, Giants, Commanders, and Cowboys. I will go with the Commanders as the most disappointing team because I think it's going to be very difficult for them to match what they did last year. Their season win total for the Commanders is 9.5. Which would put them a couple of games below what they had last year. And remember, so many things went their way. And, of course, as we've talked about before, with so many quarterbacks, not all, but many quarterbacks, the second year, the sophomore slump.
I'm going to put on this list here the Washington Commanders also and the Detroit Lions in a dead heat for the most disappointing team. And I keep saying this, the last one, but this will be the last one, the surprise team to sneak into the NFC playoffs. Greg?
Carolina.
That would be a surprise. Andy?
I picked the Giants for second in the NFC East, so I'll go with the Giants as a surprise wild card.
Andy, I'm running toe and toe with you, the New York Giants. I think it's the Dallas Cowboys, New York Giants, Philadelphia, and Washington, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the East. Hence,
do you think all 4 of them, considering your opinion on Dallas, do you think all 4 of those teams could make the playoffs? Now, keep in mind, we saw the AFC West last year have 3 of the 4 teams. But keep in mind, we also went from that 16 to 17 game schedule. That 17th game is a non-division game. So basically, all 4 teams in the division can make it, depending upon what those teams do in the 11 non-division games, making it easier now for 4 teams in the division to make the playoffs.
I wouldn't go so far as to say all 4 will make it. I would run with 3 teams to make it out of there. The Cowboys, the Eagles, and the Commanders. The Giants, while they could be the surprise, and I think they're going to have outplay their odds makers records, their odds this year. I think 4 teams out of any one division is going to be a real stretch, and I just don't know if that's the division it would happen in.
By the way, that'd be another great proposition for the odds makers to put up. How many teams out of each division will make the playoffs? 1, 2, 3, or 4? Obviously, it can't be 0.
Exactly right.
Great proposition.
Hey, guys, we're going to wrap this here. I know Andy's got to run. He's got a lot of things going on in Vegas these days. I'm going to wish you the best of luck this week, Andy. I'll look forward to visiting with you next week when we get into our predictions, our NFL football predictions. Greg DePalma, our producer extraordinaire.
By the way, are we doing the AFC next week?
We did it last week.
We did that last week.
Last week, yeah. We're going to get into the predictions, the actual nitty-gritty meat and potato predictions next week here on the show for the National Football League. Greg DePalma, I'm going to wish you the best of luck this week as well. Look forward to visiting with you next week here on the Against the Spread podcast on the ProLine TV network. Until then, once again, this is Marc Lawrence reminding you to always to remember to bet with your head, not over it. And good luck as always.